Royal Lodge. The name itself conjures images of stately elegance, sprawling grounds, a life of unimaginable privilege. But behind those imposing gates, within those historic walls, a very different story was unfolding. A story of bizarre rituals, explosive tempers, and outrageous demands. A story whispered among terrified staff, a story that's now spilling out into the harsh glare of public scrutiny as Prince Andrew, stripped of his titles and facing eviction, finally loses his grip on the life he so desperately clung to. And alongside him, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, finds her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Let's be clear, this isn't just about a disgraced prince being forced to downsize. This is a reckoning. A long overdue exposure of the toxic environment that festered within Royal Lodge, fueled by unchecked privilege and a shocking disregard for the people who served them. We're talking about lives shaped by fear, by the constant threat of a royal tantrum, and by the sheer absurdity of Andrew's eccentricities. The teddy bears. Where do you even begin? 72 stuffed toys, each meticulously dressed in sailor suits and uniforms, arranged daily on the prince's bed according to a laminated diagram. Imagine being a palace maid, your day not starting until you've perfectly positioned a battalion of bears, knowing that a single misplaced paw could trigger a royal meltdown. It sounds like something out of a twisted fairy tale, but for the staff at Royal Lodge, it was a daily reality. A symbol, perhaps, of Andrew's need for control, his inability to cope with the chaos of the real world. And it wasn't just the bears. The reports paint a picture of a man obsessed with order, with rules for everything from how his clothes were folded to how his shoes were aligned. One insider described Royal Lodge as feeling more like a military base than a home. The constant tension, the feeling of walking on eggshells, the knowledge that a minor mistake could lead to a public dressing down. It's no wonder staff dreaded working there. But what about Sarah Ferguson? Often portrayed as the fun-loving, down-to-earth royal, what role did she play in this dysfunctional dynamic? The accounts are mixed. Some describe her as warm and approachable, especially in her early years as a royal. Others paint a picture of a woman whose temperament shifted with the tides of public opinion, capable of both charm and sudden outbursts. One former aide described her as high-strung, suggesting that the pressures of royal life took their toll. There are reports of clashes with staff, of heated exchanges that left employees in tears. It's a far cry from the image of the jolly Fergie we've come to expect. However, there's another side to the story. Some insiders claim that Sarah often acted as a buffer between Andrew and his staff, attempting to diffuse his temper and soothe his ego. She was, according to one report, the only person he seemed to listen to. This complex dynamic, the divorced couple still living together, seemingly united by habit and convenience, only adds to the strangeness of the Royal Lodge saga. It was a partnership built on shifting sands, a fragile alliance that's now finally collapsing. The eviction order, the forced relocation to a smaller property on the Sandringham estate. It's a humiliating end for Prince Andrew. But for the staff who endured years of his volatile behavior, it's a form of justice. A signal that even within the seemingly impenetrable walls of the royal family, there are consequences for arrogance and abuse. The question now is, what happens next? Andrew, stripped of his status, banished to a smaller, less opulent residence on the Sandringham estate. A gilded cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. One can only imagine the fury simmering beneath that perpetually petulant exterior. After all, this is a man who has known nothing but privilege his entire life. A man who seemingly believed himself to be above reproach, above consequence. And Sarah? Cast adrift, forced to find a new home after reportedly believing she was secure in Royal Lodge indefinitely. The sale of her previous residence, a move seemingly made with the expectation of continued cohabitation, now looks like a colossal miscalculation. According to one insider, she's quietly devastated. Royal Lodge, her safe haven, her last vestige of royal life, is gone. The image of the world's happiest divorced couple shattered. He retreating to Norfolk, she scrambling to find a new foothold in a world that has become increasingly hostile. It's a stark reminder that even the most carefully constructed facades eventually crumble under the weight of reality. But what about the daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie? Reportedly deeply shaken by their parents' downfall, they've seemingly chosen to distance themselves from the chaos, seeking refuge abroad with their young families. Eugenie spending extended time in Portugal, where her husband works in property management. Beatrice dividing her time between the United States and Europe, far from the prying eyes of the British press, Can you blame them? To watch your parents' lives unravel so publicly, to see their reputations tarnished beyond repair, must be an unbearable burden. It's a poignant reminder that even royal children are not immune to the consequences of their parents' actions. The House of York fractured, each member retreating in a different direction, like pieces of a shattered mirror, reflecting a distorted image of what once was. The scandals, the accusations, the public humiliation, it's a toxic legacy that will likely haunt them for years to come. And what of the future? Can Andrew ever truly rehabilitate his image? Unlikely. The stain of scandal is too deep, the public's perception too firmly entrenched. He will likely fade into obscurity, a cautionary tale of unchecked privilege and disastrous choices. Sarah's path is less certain. Will she reinvent herself, carving out a new identity independent of the royal family? Or will she quietly disappear, another casualty of the Windsor dynasty? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear, the Royal Lodge saga is more than just a story of personal failings. It's a symptom of a larger problem, a reflection of the inherent inequalities and power imbalances that exist within the royal system. It's a reminder that behind the pomp and circumstance, behind the glittering tiaras and grand estates, there are real people with real lives, often struggling under the weight of extraordinary expectations and relentless scrutiny. The staff who endured years of mistreatment, the daughters who are now grappling with the fallout of their parents' actions. Their stories are a stark reminder that privilege comes at a price, and that even those born into royalty are not immune to the consequences of their choices. The unraveling of the Duke and Duchess of York is a tragedy, yes, but it's also an opportunity to examine the structures that allowed such behavior to flourish, to question the assumptions that underpin the monarchy, and to demand greater accountability from those who wield power. Perhaps, in the ashes of Royal Lodge, a more equitable and compassionate future can be forged. The Sandringham estate awaits, but not with open arms. Picture Andrew, stripped of his Duke of York title, now just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, arriving at his new, decidedly less grand residence. No sprawling grounds, no army of staff, just a smaller, more modest home under the watchful eye of the crown. A gilded cage, yes, but also a constant reminder of his diminished status. What must be going through his mind? Does he grasp the gravity of his situation? Does he understand the depth of public anger? Or is he, even now, clinging to the delusion that this is all a temporary setback, a misunderstanding that will eventually be rectified? It's hard to say. Andrew has always seemed to operate in a world of his own making, insulated from reality by privilege and entitlement. Perhaps, in the solitude of his new home, stripped of the trappings of royalty, the truth will finally dawn. Perhaps he will finally be forced to confront the consequences of his actions. But don't hold your breath. And Sarah, the search for a new home begins. After decades of living in the shadow of the royal family, she's now facing an uncertain future, forced to navigate a world that has changed dramatically since her days as the darling of the tabloids. Where will she go? Will she seek refuge in a quiet countryside retreat, far from the glare of the media? Or will she embrace a new chapter, reinventing herself as a businesswoman or philanthropist? It's a question that has captivated the British public. After all, Sarah has always been a figure of fascination, a royal rebel who defied convention and forged her own path. Now she has the opportunity to truly break free, to define herself on her own terms. But freedom comes at a price. Without the security and support of the royal family, Sarah will be vulnerable, exposed to the harsh realities of the outside world. She will need to rely on her own resources, her own resilience, to navigate the challenges ahead. It's a daunting prospect, but also an exciting one. Sarah has always been a survivor, a woman who has weathered countless storms and emerged stronger each time. Perhaps, in this new chapter, she will finally find the peace and fulfillment she has been searching for. Meanwhile, Beatrice and Eugenie continue their self-imposed exile, seeking solace and privacy far from the media frenzy surrounding their parents. It's a heartbreaking situation to see these young women who have always carried themselves with grace and dignity, forced to bear the burden of their parents' mistakes, They deserve better. They deserve the chance to live their lives without being constantly reminded of the scandals and controversies that have plagued their family. They deserve the space to heal and to build their own futures, free from the shadow of Royal Lodge. Will they ever be able to fully escape their family's legacy? It's unlikely. The House of York will forever be associated with scandal and disgrace, but Beatrice and Eugenie can choose to define themselves differently, to create their own identities, independent of their parents' mistakes. They have the opportunity to be a force for good, to use their platform to promote positive change and to inspire others. They can show the world that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to rise above the challenges and to create a meaningful life. The story of Royal Lodge is a cautionary tale, a reminder that privilege and power can corrupt and that even the most gilded lives can unravel. But it's also a story of resilience, of survival, and of the enduring power of the human spirit. As the dust settles on this latest chapter in the royal saga, one thing is clear. The monarchy is in need of reform. The old ways of doing things are no longer sustainable. The public demands transparency, accountability, and a commitment to ethical behavior. The future of the House of Windsor depends on its ability to adapt to these changing times, to embrace modernity, and to reconnect with the people it serves. The unraveling of the Duke and Duchess of York may be a painful experience, but it also presents an opportunity for growth and renewal. Let us hope that the lessons of Royal Lodge will not be forgotten and that the monarchy will emerge stronger and more resilient as a result.